Watching Historic Tahlequah, and we want to talk about some of the people who have gotten some of their education or all of their education at Bagley School. And I particularly want to talk a little bit about the people who were here in 1945, just at the close of World War II. Okay. And I just want to name some of them, and if you want to jump in and talk about them, why, do so. One of those people was Armin Franklin, who was a senior and president of the senior class and was in the Cardinal Yearbook at that time, and later became the owner of the Redmond shop and has a history with Northeastern football. Is there something you want to say about him? Not
an outstanding alum, and but I didn't know him personally.
You didn't know him personally. Well, he was a graduate of Bagley High School, and he was a supporter of Northeastern sports and the football team in particular, and you didn't dare interrupt anything that he had to say about that. Another of the people that I'd like to mention who is still in the community, of course, Armin has recently passed away, is Alfred Rust, who was also a senior in 1945, and he became a teacher all over this section of Oklahoma, and now has retired and lives here and is contributing to the community as a retired teacher. And let me see, another one that I want to mention, just because people who are watching this show will know these names, was Kenneth Chafin. He is deceased now, but he was a graduate of that class, and he became a nationally known leader in denominational work and a foreign missionary. So his name is recognized in the community. And then I know that when you had the big rededication of the building, when after its renovation was done, that Morris Turney was one of the, is there some, you know, he's an active member of the community now and on the city council. Is there something that you would care to say about him?
We're always pleased to have his involvement. I know he's on the alumni board, and we were excited to have him be able to attend. And
we mentioned in our previous discussion getting ready for this program, Isabel Baker, who was not in the class of 1945, but tell us something about Isabel.
Well, Isabel has probably covered all the aspects in terms of having gone here through elementary school and through high school, and then did her teacher training here, and then later came back and was on the faculty preparing elementary teachers, and is now on our advisory board. So she has kind of come full circle, and we're always pleased and excited to have Isabel in any kind of group.
Right, yes. Another of the people in 1945 that I want to mention, I think she was a junior in 1945, was Mary Lou Hutchinson, and her son, Ken Purdy, is now mayor of Tahlequah, and she was maid of honor to the football queen in 1945, and her parents were teachers and taught all through this area and came back to Cherokee County to teach. And now Ken Purdy, her son, and her husband was John Purdy, and he and his brother had both went to school here and had Purdy's sports shop down in our business section. So I'm just delighted to name some of the people who have a connection to Bagley. And I think it is interesting, I just have to say this, Dr. Grant, that throughout the history of Bagley as a separate entity, there was always a supervisor of elementary music and a high school choral director, and there was also an orchestra and a band. The emphasis in those years was definitely on the arts and on music, and that is such a contributing thing to education.
Yes, and we're certainly hoping that can continue despite budget cuts.
Yes, we want it to continue.
Yes.
Well, in those years of the 40s, there was a good relationship with the public schools. But then in 1952, the building was transferred to the public schools, and our junior high in the Tahlequah Public Schools was placed in this building. And then in 1964, it came back to the Northeastern.
Right.
And the new high school was built in Tahlequah. Is there something you'd like to say about the design for the building use in '64?
Well, I think it was one of those, I've heard stories of the people who were here during the time that it was used as a junior high and a high school, and what classes took place. We've had fun being a part of the Bagley reunion the last several years and talking to those folks and hearing that typing and band used to take place on the 3rd floor before it was removed.
It did.
And it was near the early 70s, end of the 60s, that the story goes that the roof was leaking and they came in over Christmas break and just basically sawed off the 3rd floor. And
to a lot of horror.
Yes, yes. And so we were very excited to, during this last renovation, that we were able to restore some of the architectural integrity of the original building and have the 3rd floor returned. But the students would, the former students, when they came back, would say, well, there used to be lockers here, and there was speculation as to whether the lockers are still in there out there, whether they just put sheetrock over them or whether they actually took those out. And Miss So-and-so's English class was up here, and very vivid memories of all the things that took place. It's really hard to look at the offices and the classrooms that we have now and connect them to the exact spots that used to be.
Well, during the time that it was a part of the public schools, we were in a building program for elementary schools, and I was teaching music, of course, in Tahlequah. And some of our classes, our elementary classes, were on the 3rd floor. And I came up and went onto the 3rd floor in a room that had a skylight and no windows, and taught a music class there in 1956. And the band room was at the end of the hall. So it has had a wide and varied use. And I think I was telling you earlier that when it was still a demonstration school of the university, and I was teaching, having my practice teaching in this room, I filled in for a colleague of mine who was also a practice teacher and a horrible disciplinarian, and he was letting the students jump out of the windows of this room during his 7th and 8th grade choir, and they were terribly shocked when I didn't allow that when I closed the window and said we'd have choir. So this building has had a unique history in education.